Okay, well, we are live. Get rid of that. I think get rid of the screen share. And let's see if I can get my... Sorry, trying to work through this. Changes here. All right, here we go. We'll do that. And there we go. Oh, welcome everybody. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. So this is all things wood turning with Todd Rains. Let me get that other image back up. So every Friday afternoon at 2:30 Central Time in the U.S., we talk about all things wood turning, tools and equipment, processes, techniques, wood materials. And so welcome. I'm glad to be here myself. We've had some internet issues over the last few weeks, and I think hopefully we've got those resolved now. So, and I am having a slight issue here with the controls, but that's just me, I think, at this point. So 2:30 Todd. Why 2:30 Todd? Well, it's obviously 2:30 in Central where I live, but back in the day, that was the time we got off work on Fridays. So it was one of those nicknames that kind of stuck. So sit down, have a beer, end of the day, hopefully for most of you. So let's see, last week we went over some bowl gouge sharpening. It was a replay basically the week before we had internet outage completely. So we had some issues. I'm just going to check the Facebook strength and streaming data here to see if I'm actually streaming. And good Lord, maybe I'm not. Am I not live? Uh-oh. Hang on. Anybody sees that I'm live, if you could send a comment. Facebook is not cooperating. Right now, webcam, go live. I don't know what's going on, to be honest. My stream key didn't work. It's very strange. I don't know if this is going to be on a different channel or not. This does not seem to be right. Oh, for crying out loud. What is going on? Let me check. Sorry about this if you guys are hanging on. And it looks like I'm on Facebook. So, okay, so I'm guessing it's only YouTube that's not working. So I apologize for that for whatever reason. So we'll carry on, and I'll try and figure out what's happening with YouTube. I think I'm on a different live on YouTube. So the one I posted, it somehow screwed up the stream key. So we'll carry on anyway. This will be a Facebook Live. So you're on Facebook and you see this. Okay, good. Thank you. Working on YouTube. Okay, well, good. Facebook not working. Oh. Okay, well, this is strange. So, because I thought I saw myself on Facebook working. Anyway, let's carry on. At least I got YouTube working. I don't know on my end. It's kind of screwed up. So, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. So we do have some people that's working on YouTube. So that's good. Thanks, Rick, for being here, and Steve, thank you. So it's good to know. I don't think this is related to the network issues we had yesterday. It doesn't make sense. It would. I think YouTube has made some changes to the API. I don't know. So I have to go through and work that again. So thanks for being here, the two of you. Appreciate it. So today we are going to talk about, as I was saying last week, we talked about bowl gouges and sharpening. It was a repeat of the failed attempt the week before that. And so I figured we'd move on to spindle gouges and talk a little bit about spindle gouges, and look at those. And here comes my wife. What's she saying?
I'm watching you.
Is it on YouTube or Facebook? Can you check the Facebook for me?
I'm on my phone.
Can you check Facebook? Make sure I'm live there.
Okay.
Thanks. I could use all the help I could get right now. So let me get back here. Okay. Andy, thank you. I see you on Facebook. Okay, good. So something's working. So that's good. Maybe it's just the new interface on YouTube. Now this week, spindle gouges, I figured we'd take a look at those. One of the reasons was, we talked about bowl gouges. Let's look at spindle gouges, see some of the different sizes and uses, if you will, and we'll go from there. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up from Shelly. So Shelly says hi to everybody. So Joaquin, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Got you on Facebook. I appreciate that. So I'm glad it's working. Anyway, we'll see. We'll move on. Spindle gouges. We talked, we've all kind of seen, know what they are in some regards. Some people maybe new to woodturning don't know bowl gouge difference from a spindle gouge. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot of difference in some of them. There's a few simple rules and one exception. So I guess maybe there's no rules and one exception. Maybe that's it. So bowl gouges I use on bowls and spindles. Spindle gouges, with the one exception I'll tell you in a second. See you, Shelly Rains. Okay, good. Thanks, Shelly. Appreciate that. She posted those. She's on Facebook under my account. So it's a good question, Andy. We'll get there. And I'm not a professor of angles, so we'll see. I think there's going to be some general rules of thumb and then some variation on the theme. So, but sort of the general uses, I guess, is bowl gouges can be used on bowls and spindles. Spindle gouges I use on spindles and bowls, depending on the spindle gouge. So a spindle gouge that is a spindle roughing gouge, you shouldn't use on bowls. Anything with a large cutting edge that's going to catch a lot is in high corners are tough to use on bowls. So because of the grain orientation and the end grain fiber rotating with the long grain fibers, and it's just a little catchy with a long edge. So let me. I've got my little stream deck is not working today for some reason, so I've got to switch some of these things manually. So bear with me. I can just do it here. Yes. So overhead. There we go. So I've got on the table on my lathe several spindle gouges, some from the store, some from my own personal collection. So let's take a look. So, and I should pull out this other one. This is kind of one of the ones to show. Exception to the rule, if you will, on these large roughing gouges. So this is really the only exception that I really a lot of people talk about and listen about and stuff, is this spindle roughing gouge. This is a spindle roughing gouge Use this on spindles only. Typically, a tool like this has a small tang and a large cutting edge. So this small tang doesn't have the strength required if this whole cutting edge is caught, and especially on a bowl, it'll bend the tool. So do not use this on a bowl or face grain turning where the grain is going across the bedways, not this way. So the new roughing gouges are very stout. This is a Carter and Son. Thompson has kind of one like this as well. Very stout in the stock, and they're not going to bend if you get a catch, but there's just too much cutting edge here for, I'll put my talking head up here. Sorry, I'm going to bottom right. I think that's not yet. So there's just too much cutting edge here to really be safe on a bowl gouge. When you're using it on a spindle, you've got grain going across just like my finger, and you're only hitting that much. But on a bowl, we've got a curved surface, you could hit a whole bunch of them. So something to be aware of. And even on a tight curve on a spindle, it's sometimes a little precarious down in there. So size the tool for the size of cut you want to make. So long sweeping curves on spindles, these roughing gouges are a great tool. Of course, squared around makes sense. They are round in cross section. So if I take a look at that, you'll see it's round in cross section. The bevel angle typically around 40 degrees, I believe. I don't know if I got a little measuring thing up here. It's not a very good one anyway. I gotta get another one. Let's see. Let me just do this briefly here. So yeah. So this little thing is showing about 40 degrees. So spindle gouge, 40 degrees, typically that and less, maybe 45 degrees and less. So that's the spindle roughing gouge. We've got another size of that, 7/8. So a smaller size, same idea, half round in cross section and a 40-degree bevel angle. So the other tools, let's go. I don't have a large one in the Carter and Son. Carter and Son doesn't make a 5/8, but I've got a 5/8 Thompson spindle gouge. And now and that one's gonna be about 35. Yeah, that one's about 35 degrees. Maybe not quite. I've got to get on that. And like I said, this is not the best. At 37.5, so not the best protractor to use for this thing. So let's take a look at what makes the difference between a spindle gouge and a bowl gouge. Here's a 5/8 bowl gouge and a 5/8 spindle gouge. They both have the same diameter steel, but you can see even by the flute shape up here that we're taking a wider cut than the bowl gouge, the spindle gouge. If we go to profile, you'll see that there's more material moved off the top of the tool on the spindle gouge. What that does is get the cutting edge lower into the groove. So we'll look at this head on. You'll see the flute depth is not near as deep on the spindle gouge, this one on my left, versus the bowl gouge. So you get wings and they're sharpened a little different. This one has kind of still got the factory grind or the typical fingernail grind. I'll leave this one this way. I've got other ones that are sharpened differently. So, but we have typically a very shallow flute in a bowl gouge. A spindle gouge versus a bowl gouge, which is a deeper flute. I won't say more deep. I don't know. We'll learn English too, so we'll figure that one out. So that's a 5/8. So let's look at a 1/2 inch. So I've got a couple of different 1/2 inch ones in the Carter and Son. Oops, that's going out pretty good. And I've got two different styles in the 1/2 inch in Carter and Son. So let's look at these two first. So there's two here, but if we look at the standard 1/2 inch versus the 1/2 inch low profile, if you look at the side profile, you'll see there's a lot more material taken off the low profile tool than the standard 1/2 inch spindle gouge. They're still very shallow in terms of the flute But the low profile gets your cutting edge a lot lower, and so you can get a much narrower tool at the tip to get into fine details. If you look at, watch Cindy Drozda, her gouge is sharp and pointy, but it's typically a low profile. She likes a low profile, I think. I don't know if she's on, but she may ask that, or may answer that. So those are two of the same size gouges, 1/2 inch, one low profile, and one standard. The Thompson gouge I have here is the one where I've sharpened it. Basically, it's the same sharpening technique I showed on the bowl gouge. It's in the same jig, pretty much the same settings. The only thing I do is I bring the V-arm or the pocket arm closer so I get a steeper angle. I guess steeper or shallower, or whatever it is. So this is about a 35-degree bevel angle on this tool. So versus a 55-degree on a bowl gouge. So, but I have the same projection on the one-way jig. So I use the same. That's the wrong jig. This is a brief aside. So I don't know if anybody else has found this, but I've got two one-way jigs. I got one that's really tall and one that's short. And this, I guess, I think I purchased it by mistake. I didn't know there's a difference. So that was like 10 years ago. This one is too tall to fit close to my grinder. So it doesn't get used a whole lot. But anyway, back to this. So this spindle gouge will go in the jig. Will be set the same depth as my bowl gouges, but I'll just push it closer, the arm closer to get a steeper angle or a 35-degree angle on the gouge. So that's just makes it easy for me to have one jig to do all the sharpening, whether it's bowl gouges or spindle gouges. So, and then I try to get the gouge. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit tighter here. And I'm going to go to, let's try this camera. So I get a nice rounded tip on the end there of whatever the diameter is, up that's close to maybe 1/4 inch diameter. And then nice sort of flat wings across the top. And same on the other side, and with a little convexity to the curve. And with spindle gouges, you get pretty flat in terms of the top of this curve. They don't change much because of the shallow flute. So that's nice. But leave it flat or convex. Don't ever get a concave in there. So. And then I want to take a look at these two little 3/8 gouges. The reason being is we've got a detail gouge. So in one of these, and what is a detail gouge versus a standard gouge versus a low profile? So the one on my right, or this one here I'm waving around, is the detail gouge, and this is the standard gouge. So first of all, it's, for whatever reason, it's a lot shorter. It's about 1 inch shorter than the other one. So I don't know why Carter's chose to make it shorter. I'm not sure. But if we look at the flute, I'll try to get my head out of the way of the size of the tool. You'll see there's a lot more steel or mass in the detail gouge. So side view, it's almost round stock all the way down the shaft. There's only a little bit taken off. So let's take that next to. So here's the low profile. You can see how much steel is taken off. Here's the standard gouge. And here is the detail gouge. So it's really about milling out the flute and making the steel skinny versus fat. So the low profile gets into skinny places. The detail will get into skinny places depending on how you grind this back, but have a lot stouter composition and a lot smaller flute here because not very much taken off. So that's physical differences. Use is another thing. So we can talk about that as well. So those gouges. Let's see, what have I got on my side of the table? So I've got my own standard 1/2-inch gouge. Here's how I've sharpened it differently from Carter & Son standard grind. So the same tool, but I've sharpened it basically how I sharpened the other one in the jig, the same depth in the one-way jig, and just ground wings on it. So it changes it from a fat fingernail to a skinnier fingernail and gives me some longer edges here. Different purposes. This is just the way I started grinding them. And like I said, I'm going to keep my big one with a bigger sort of traditional sweep on it. But yeah, so grind how you like. So let me put that one back on that side. These two back. And here is, so that was a Thompson gouge. I've also got a P&N gouge, which is an Australian gouge. P&N Tools. This is a detail gouge. You can see it's thicker in cross section across the flute. It's not the same, but the flute is very shallow. So if I take a look at, different manufacturers have different styles. So you can kind of see this is a deeper flute than this one. So it's just really about milling less on this one than this one. And so you get a narrower flute as well as a stouter tool. And you can get a nice sort of very flat. You can see how flat that grind comes out on this flute that's barely milled out. You'll end up with very flat wings here. This one you can see a bit of curvature in it because you've got more flute to go down into. So, and then this is probably not sharp and steep enough. I don't even know what angle that is. I haven't used it. Yeah, this is about 45 degrees. So I haven't really used this tool for quite a while. So I'll probably regrind this around 35 to 40 degrees and make it a bit more useful. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about Andy's question about angles. Let me just catch up a little bit. So Andy, spindle gouge, what grind angle? So 35 to 45 degrees. You can go less than that if you're getting really into a very fine cutting tool. I know Cindy has a vortex tool at 25 degrees. And I think the other spindle gouge she uses is probably around 30, 35 degrees. So yeah, I got a question here from Rick. So I get confused when I hear turners talk about continental spindle gouges, deep fluted spindle gouges, shallow fluted spindle gouges, traditional versus finger. Okay, so continental, let me see. I think I have an old one here. And that's a good question, Rick. Let me see if I do have that here. Something I bought at a swap meet. It was quite a while ago. I haven't used it, so. Continental gouge is a spindle gouge that's basically, let me get this thing off. I can see myself. So here is a typical continental gouge. So it's a stamped or pressed piece of steel, and very much like a traditional roughing gouge. I don't know what the term is. It's not forged. It's pressed, or what do you call it? When you just move steel by massive forces, cold rolled or cold formed or something like that. Somebody might chime in, let me know. But basically, it's formed up and just bent instead of heated and bent. It's cold. I think it's cold forged. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's how they're made years ago. And this is basically, if you take that roughing gouge and just cut the wings off, you kind of got a continental gouge. So, and a continental gouge is called that because I think it was used on the continent, the European continent, for most everything they use this kind of tool. I don't know if that's true. That's what I'm kind of getting out of my head, why it would be called that. And this is basically a spindle gouge that would be used for almost everything in the turning. I think later on, after these were used, they came out with a rougher gouge and they came out with different shapes. So continental gouge, deep fluted spindle gouge is the standard spindle gouge. It's about as deep as you're going to get. Shallow fluted spindle gouges are detail gouge. So shallow flute, like on this one or this one, the very shallow flute here. And let me turn them this way. Let's see how. I'm going to zoom in again. That's really bad. So you can see how shallow those milling are. So that's a shallow fluted gouge, spindle gouge. Those are called detail gouges. The other way to shallow the flute or call it is what they call a low profile. And basically it's a shallow fluted gouge as well. But what they've done is taken the top, focus that again, taken the top off the whole gouge. So here is a shallow detailed gouge, a lot of round stock left, low profile gouge, a lot of the round stock removed. So, low profile, shallow flute, low profile, detail, two different shapes and how to mill. Traditional versus fingernail grind. So traditional, I don't know if the continental grind is kind of a traditional. It's more of a, fat thumb than a fingernail. This is a sort of a typical, and all you're looking at is the shape of the tip is the fingernail grind. This one is very pointy. So that's a specialty tool where I do cut tendons with it. It's very similar to my handles. Spindle. I use this one almost exclusively for cutting tendons. And it's a spindle gouge. It's very pointy, and it's got pretty straight, slight convex curves and a nice angle here that allows me to cut and dovetail. So I don't know if that helps where to use them. I think it's really a matter of preference about how you use them. So got follow up there, Rick. Just let me know. Again, this is just my experience talking. Other people may have different definitions. It's kind of like, in the last 10 years, the term Irish grind, Ellsworth grind, and sweatback grind kind of on a bowl gouge have kind of melded into similar terms. Some people have different, defined definitions of them. That may be true, but as society progresses, as wood turners progress, some of those definitions morph. So, let's see, Andy, is the leg setting on the vergrind different for a spindle gouge? For me, no, I don't change it. So this setting here, I don't change this. This hasn't moved for a long time. There's maybe reasons why it should, but for me, for simplicity's sake, I haven't. I may in the future. This is where you keep learning, you keep trying different things, experimenting. But right now, the way I use this and the way I grind all of my, that's a story to grind, but all my spindle gouges, I use the same jig leg setting here. But I just vary how close this is to the wheel, and that changes this angle. So if the wheel's here instead of here, it may be up higher to change that angle. So that's the way I do it. I'm not saying it's the right way, but that's the way I do it. So for me, it's right, I guess. So Rick, yeah, you bet. Thanks. I appreciate you chiming in. So that's a mass of tools. Let's see. I've got to, let's see if I can kind of pick this up a little bit. So I'll put these guys away. Back in the drawer, in the back of the drawer, where we don't really use them. We've all got tools kind of like that, don't we? Back in the back of the drawer, and there's auto occasions that we may grab them and use them. So inventory. Oh, there's a couple more here on the table we haven't looked at. These are kind of, so most of these spindle gouges, which we talk about, the flute shape is circular, if you will, or hemispherical, or U-shaped. I think they're mostly, there's not a lot of flute there to really tell. I'm off camera here looking at it. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of material to tell, what that flute shape really is. I've got just a pretty much circular wall of steel. So on a bowl gouge, you get those three shapes we talked about: the V shape, the U shape, and then the parabolic shape. And that's a bad parabolic shape. Oh my gosh! And that's I'll take that off screen because that's really bad drawing. Okay. So most of the spindle gouges are cut with a pretty rounded shape, if you will, or circular sort of profile. These two are the Mahoney brand from Carter and Son. And I don't know a lot about these two tools, to be honest with you. I haven't really studied Mike's language of tools very much. I'm looking down the flute as I'm talking. This is called the finalizer. To me, it looks like a standard 3/8 gouge. Let me grab that out and see and compare. So it's a bit shallower. It's not quite, it's almost like a low profile in a way. So this is a 1/2 inch low profile. So it's kind of in between. So this is standard. This is Mahoney's finalizer. So the material taken off the top of the tool here looks halfway between the standard and the low profile. So that would be the finalizer. I'm going to make sure I get this, because they're so similar. I got to make sure I get this right. So I'm going to put that back in the box because I'm going to get that confused otherwise. This other one is a double-barreled resolver, and this is an interesting tool because it's a parabolic flute bottom bowl gouge, small bottom bowl gouge on this side. And on this side, it's a spindle gouge. It looks very similar to the finalizer, like it probably is. So this is 2 tools in 1. And I think I'm going to take one of these out of inventory for myself. So don't tell Shelly that. She's probably listening. She's going to go, "Oh, no, you don't, mister." Okay, so those are some of the gouges that are in stock. And I've got variations on the theme in my own tool arsenal. I've got 5 different spindle gouges that I have. So, between them, I've got, I think I've covered the gamut. So 5/8, 1/2 inch, sort of fingernail grind, a 1/2 inch or close to 1/2 inch. It's metric, it's 12 millimeter. Very pointy grind, a 1/2 inch fingernail grind, in the Carter and Son tool, and the 3/8 very pointed grind. So, and then I've got my tandem cutter in there. So let's, Norm, good to have you here. Leg affects length of wing, not angle. Leg affects length of wing. On the one-way Wolverine. Yes. It's the nose angle is by how far close or far away you move the V arm. I believe this. Let's see. Rick, do you hone your spindle or detail gouges? It's a good question. And yes, I do. If I cleaned up the shop the other day, and I don't have I don't know. I have to remember where I put the home. So this is the DMT, they call it the slider sharp. I kind of like it. I've been using it quite a bit in the shop. It's got a cone hone on this end and a flat hone on this side, so they slide in there. So so I do hone gouges, more so the flutes of bowl gouges, just because they're more accommodating to a cone hone inside a flute. Spindle gouge, you can, oops, I'm off camera. You can hone and flatten, and especially on the Thompson gouges. Let me zoom in a little bit to show something. This is something I kind of learned from Cindy's sharpening YouTube video. Take a look at that when you got a chance. And this is a bad example because I've got it kind of dirty. So you can see the flute on the Carter and Son tool is polished. So it's very polished inside here. The Thompson gouges aren't as polished. You can see the line marks. If I had better light on that, might work better. Let me see if I can go into this camera. You can see those milling marks inside there, those lines. So those lines are, the cutter marks and the grinder marks coming down the flute. If we look at those on in fact, I should go back to that camera. If we look at those on the edge of the gouge, you can see little striations on top of the edge there. And those are caused by the little grooves in the flute coming out at the sharp point. So that's not a bad thing at times to have those little saw teeth, if you will, on top of the cutting edge. It'll cut just fine. Some people prefer to hone those ridges flat and get the inside of the flute nice and flat there, and then go to the grinder so that you get a nice continuous non-serrated edge on as much as if you microscopically look at this, it'll be a little serrated. But honing the inside prior to sharpening or on your gouge, you can get rid of those little saw teeth, if you will, on the end of your gouge. You don't have that with the Carter and Son because they polish their flutes, so you won't have those little saw teeth on the end of your gouge. But the gouges will work either way. A lot of people sharpen and go straight off the grinder, beige grit wheel, and go to turning. So that just tells you that the kind of rough grind on the end of a gouge works for them. Some people, like me, I think the stone here I have is, or the CBN wheel I have is either 320 or 180 or 320. I can't remember. So my sharpening when I go to the grinder, I'm taking out very little steel and putting a good, really fine edge on it. And I find that works fine for me. So you hone your spindle. So yeah, that's if I hone my bowl gouges more than that, my spindle gouges. Where I will hone a spindle gouge is my roughing gouge. If I want to quickly clean up I'm going to go overhead again. If I want to quickly kind of clean up and instead of going back to the grinder, I will hone that. Because this is a hollow grind, you'll get honing marks right on the edge here and right on the edge up here. You can see if I hone right there. There we go. You can see the glinting right off the edge there and off the heel. It won't ever get this middle part. So that's a good way to get a quick edge if you just need one last cut before the finished project, before you go to the grinder. Especially this, it's not really hard to sharpen this one, but other tools, maybe stick with the jig, set the jig up, all that kind of stuff. So a quick hone sometimes keeps your project on track while you're time in the shop more efficient, if you will. It's got lots of questions today, Rick. I like it. So let's see. Let me get my face up there so you can kind of see everything. Oh, that doesn't work. All right. So going back to the bowl gougers, at a symposium, one of the demonstrators talked about a fluteless bowl gouge for the bottom of a bowl. Any thoughts on them? A fluteless bowl gouge. That, to me, sounds like the spindle master, whatever it's called, that is used for mostly pen turning. And I bet it's at the back of the bus here too. Yeah, it is. It's back there with my oval skew. There we go. So here we go. Is this what you're talking about, Rick? So here is what is this thing called? I don't even know. But it's basically a flat stock bar with a round back on it and a bevel on it. It's almost like a larger version of the vortex tool, if you will. And, it's a very steep angle on here. I think it's got to be maybe 25 degrees, and that's probably too steep for what I was using for. But this is I forget what it's called. I want to say Skewky gouge or something like that. But it's a fluteless gouge. This was used for. I use this for pen turning. So let me. I'm going to take off my overlay here. So when I was doing pen turning, this is what I'd use to turn the pens with. And to be honest, I didn't like it. And that's why it's sitting at the back of my drawer. You can see I've burnt the tips sharpening it and stuff. But there's probably some use or some place to use this, but it's in the back of my drawer for a reason. Other fluteless gouges. The only thing I think of is scrapers. So I don't know otherwise. Hope that helps. I don't like them. Flutes are good for chip ejection and creating a shearing angle edge. So if you look at any gouge, you've got a curved edge here, and that's an infinite. It's all curved, so there's infinite cutting edges, infinite straight edges along that curve. And so if you put this up to wood, you're cutting here, you're cutting here, you're cutting here, you're cutting here, you're cutting here. And so you get all those edges. With a fluteless gouge, you've got this one edge. You've only got the edge in a horizontal plane. You don't have the rotational aspect of this tool to get a different cutting edge. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but that's That's kind of the way I look at it. Tony, I'll dock you pay for being late, okay? So you owe me. Let's see, Rick. I think it's a Doug Thompson tool. Yeah, and I think it may be, Rick, a special tool made for somebody. I think, I want to say Keith Tompkins maybe had developed a fluteless gouge. Don't know if that's right or not. Maybe somebody else will chime in. How is that going to get you to the bottom of a bowl? Yeah, well, it's not, Norm. I don't know. For me, the only thing I've used this thing on is, where's it? Where's the camera? Is, like I said, Spindle's pen turning. That's the only place I use this. So that's the only answer I can give. I'll take a look at this chat later, and I'll see if I can research something for you, Rick. But other than that, I'm not sure. So tune in next week. You may get an answer. Emphasize the word may. So okay, I gotta get my face up there because I'm smiling too much. Okay, this is gonna kill me. Send me a bill, okay? I will, Tony. I will. Thank you very much for making this enjoyable as well. I'm glad you're having fun and I'm having fun. So let's see, we're at 3:15, so 10 minutes left, thereabouts. So I don't know that I'll do anything on the lathe. I've got this table in my way, but it'll take me a minute to get down. So I probably won't turn anything today. But what I'll do, I want to bring up, put this guy back in the back of the drawer. Back with the oval skew. I should bring that oval skew out someday and play with it more. Let's see. The 1/4 inch half round diamond hone would look good for honing too. Yes, it would. This little guy that's behind my head. And that mostly as I use for the hook tool, but it would it's good as gouge. So I'll try to do this with my head out of the way a little bit. But yeah, so that would hone down in there as well. And then the flat side is also good, so you can hone that. It's a nice one. It's pocket size. It's portable. It's inexpensive. Have that in your magnetic dish like I do up on the headstock. Steve says you could turn a ball with a spindle gouge. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Put me on the spot. I could, but I don't. I'm not going to do that now. So I will. I do have on my website a video on spear training. So I think it's up there. Let's see. Where was I going to go? I was going to go and put up a couple banners. So. Q&A. So post in the comments even after. So I should have done this part at the beginning. I always forget about this, but if you could hit the like button in YouTube or the thumbs up in Facebook, whichever it is, maybe I got that backwards. That'll help sort of promote these live streams, get more people involved, and then post comments in these things even afterwards. I typically go through the comments. Sometime over the weekend to make up what I'm going to do for the next show. So I think next week we'll look at, I've done hole gouges, done spindle gouges. We'll look at scrapers and parting tools and take a look at those. I want to finish this series on sort of tools, this progression we've made. I talked about the skew weeks back. Don't tell anybody, but I did have a couple of catches there with the skew. We talked about bowl gouges. We talked about spindle gouges. We'll talk about scrapers, whether it's negative edge, whether it's an integral scraper or a scraper blade. And then I think in the weeks following, we'll talk about other things around wood turning. Rick had some good ideas talking about sanding and finishing and stuff like that, so we can do some of that. So that's kind of where these things are headed. I've got this schedule for the next, for 12 weeks total. So I think it ends in September, October, but I'll probably do this more. I might take a little break for a week or two and then start another series. But let me say this. Every Friday at 2:30 we'll be here for the next several weeks, 8 weeks or so, for sure, and perhaps longer. Crossing our fingers the internet holds out. So yeah, join me, ask questions, put questions in the comments. I'll review those and make notes for future shows. Rick's been good about that. Tony, Steve, Norm, go ahead and send me some other stuff, and we can try and capture those in future shows. I do want to show this. So I'm doing a personal remote demo next Wednesday, the 19th of August at 6 p.m. I'm turning a small wine glass, and it's something like this one. Didn't bring the black and white one out there. And Steve, your demo last night from the County Club was basically the same sort of techniques, except I'm not going to burn my wine glasses. I am going to, though that's horrible. Write that out. Actually, let me go. So that guy, this is one of the prototypes. This was black with gold. It's not white. It sits in my shop. It doesn't go in the house. It's not worthy. But that's the kind of thing we're going to do on Wednesday. Turn a little wine glass. I'll probably have one prepared that's already stained, and then we'll do some cream filler coloring technique, and we'll talk about that and how this proceeds. So that's Wednesday. Please join me if you so wish. It's one of those $10 things. Hopefully you all can make it. I think Rick, you're joining, aren't you? Or maybe it was the other one you joined. That can't work. Let's see. I've got a few other demos scheduled. End of the month, August 31. I'm doing a piston box demo, and then I'm doing a hook tool hollowing demo on the 26th of September. Those last two are going to be at noon. I'm hoping to get some more geographical locations with that time frame joining in. So let's see. Let me get that up. Oh, there I am. Look at. There we go. So that works. Yes, Rick said yes. He is joining. So I'm in if you need to go. So you sure, Steve? So yeah, I mean that's good news. I haven't settled on anyone else yet. So let me talk to you offline about that. We can certainly use help. I want to try and get Shelley involved as well. So maybe you could co-host with her and show her the ropes. So let's see. Yes, Rick, thank you. Yeah, you are in. I appreciate that. I do. So, yep, sounds good, Steve. Okay, well, I think I did have some. This is actually set up for tomorrow. I've got a club demo. Doing a club demo tomorrow, so I've got to change things around in the shop and get set up for that and stuff. So next week, same time, same bat channel. And just one last plug, DMT products are on sale, 10% off until the end of August. So check the website for those. And if you have any questions, holler at me, drop me an email, give me a thumbs up. And 2:30 Todd will be back with you next week. Until then, everybody stay safe, have a healthy weekend, and we'll keep in touch. That's it for me. I'm going to sign out. Y'all take care. Thanks again for joining.